Hi, this is Coach Joe Lukacs, and welcome to the Magellan Network Show. My goal inside of this communication, this show, is to share with you my nearly 30 years of coaching some of the most successful financial advisors in North America. We're going to be talking about strategies, syntaxes. We're going to be bringing guests on from time to time, and I'm going to share with you what's working now. So think of this show as sort of like a little one-on-one kind of mini coaching cast, if you like, where we're going to be going in depth from time to time on strategies to help you grow your business, get more effective, become more efficient, find balance in your time management, grow your business, and quite frankly, whatever else is going on in the world today. So before we get to today's episode, I'd love for you to do a couple things for me. Number one, make sure that if you're watching this on YouTube, that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're doing the audio, make sure that you give us a review on whether Spotify or Apple. We'd really appreciate that. And quite frankly, that does help. It does matter when you rate things and like things and subscribe to things. It helps us get the word out to more of the industry. And lastly, I have a very special gift for you. Go to MagellanNetwork.net, so one word, MagellanNetwork.net, and I have for you a complimentary membership, 100% gratis, where you can tap into about between 50 and 75 hours of masterclasses, forms, tools, templates, and strategies. So please go ahead and make sure you go ahead and get that claimed, smash the like button and subscribe. And please go ahead and leave us a review on whatever podcasting platform you're on. And now, let's get to this week's episode. So Charlie and I, we have a lot of common clients together. Charlie's also one of my strategic partners inside of Magellan Network. So we were on Zoom just kind of catching up with each other. It was like, I think it was like in August. And I said, I was outside the other day, Charlie, and I was cutting down a tree in the Florida heat with an axe. It's a true story. And I had this thought that came to my head. And the thought, it was almost like a question. How does someone who needs financial guidance, advice, planning, help, how do they end up on the internet? And how did they get there? And why did they get there, right? So what causes somebody to say, I think it's a good idea to give Smart Asset my information, or, I'm going to go to this seminar at this restaurant or online seminar, and I'm going to listen to a stranger, someone I don't know, and I got to determine if I trust. Like, how do we end up there as an industry? And the only thing that came to mind was that we fail as an industry really getting the word out to our clients, to our network, to our COIs, that we're here. And if you care about someone, like, you want them dealing with somebody that you trust, right? And so we fail miserably in that message for the most part. And to your comment, lead gen has a place, no question about it. But, I think a lot of advisors rely on that easy button and they miss out on it, right? So to me, that was just like one of my epiphanies, like, how do we end up here? Right, from that perspective. So that's why you and I kind of talked about it and said, would it be nice to do a segment on it and kind of really talk about. And again, I'm not knocking any of those. I got clients that use Smart Asset, Ramsey, White Glove, Agura. I mean, I got everybody doing everything.
Yeah.
And so it has its place, but not in replacement of something. And I think that's really the frame we need to talk about today.
I love it. That's a great way to frame it up. And to your point, I think there's a place for all of that, for purchasing all of that. And I'll share with you anecdotally. So first off, for those joining us, my equipment is not as nice as Joe's because I'm on location. And so I'm actually standing up in one of our common clients' offices. But the client I was with yesterday, Joe, I played a little goof on him, right? I went into his office yesterday, and you know exactly who I'm talking about, so we won't get too specific. But my wife likes to make T-shirts.
Okay.
Right, I got the goofy mustache and glasses thing that shows up. Well, I had our mutual client who I visited yesterday. I had him like this big on a T-shirt, and he walked in and he said, "I hate that."
And I can see him doing that too.
Yeah, I was like, I'm just goofing, man. I'm just goofing. But here's what that speaks to. And I think maybe part of the issue we're talking about, This particular person, though he has a very high profile, just published a book, and his
Yep.
previous firm was an MDRT every single year kind of guy. He doesn't like to put him, he doesn't like to ask difficult questions necessarily.
Right.
And he's a very modest, humble person.
Mhm.
He didn't like it because he didn't want to have to look at himself in this, and it was him bigger than life, it was in front
Right.
of his logo and stuff. It was a cool picture. But I think that might lead some to it. I don't know your thoughts on that.
I mean, look, I think if we're really going to get into the R word or the I word for referrals and introduction, when I go around speak, even I do things virtually, and we're just talking about business growth, just in a very general sense. There's always one question I ask the room. I say, what is the best way for you and advisor to get a new relationship? And 98% are going to pick 1A or 1B or combination, which is going to be a referral from a very happy client slash advocate or a well thought after COI, common client, CPA attorney, so on and so forth. There's always the 2%ers that'll still like cold calling and kind of stuff like that, which is cool, right? From that perspective. So I said, great. So we're all kind of seeing the world, same worldview. Second follow-up question now. How much time, energy, and effort do you put towards item one and item two? Ah, and that's where everybody starts looking around, staring into space. So this is to me like, and we're all smart. I mean, you don't want to be in this industry if you're not. And I've never had a good answer to the question, why is there such a disconnect? If intellectually in a business case, we agree that it'd be great to grow organically in terms of new households, that is, referral and from NCOIs, but we don't do really put any, we give it lip service. It happens by accident, right? But there are advisors who will say, yeah, A, 1B, but they got no problem stroking a three, four, five, $6,000 check a month
Crazy,
to
right?
go do lead gen. And so the question becomes why, right? If you look at it from a business case perspective, if you're rock starring this and then you want to do that to turbocharge the whole thing, I totally get it, right? But if we're going to be not doing this and instead doing that,
Yeah.
especially if you've been at this for a while, okay, so walk me through why that's a good idea, right? And I think what it boils down to for most advisors, at least the ones I really kind of talk to, like, hey man, help me understand you and why we're doing this, right?
Yeah.
It's FOMO, fear of missing out. Like, in other words, if I'm not on that smart asset list, somebody else is, right? And that means I'm not getting. And so they kind of create this in their mind that, well, if I don't get that, then therefore I'm not going to be able to do what I need to do for my vision and my goals and my growth. And they kind of convince themselves that I got to do it.
You have to be there.
And even though it's probably one of the least efficient and effective ways to source a new relationship.
It is. A couple of thoughts there. Number one, I think that referral conversation is very difficult for a lot of advisors. And it speaks to the issue with the gentleman I was with yesterday, right?
Mhm.
Is there is a fear of having that conversation. There's a fear of asking. I don't know how big of a fan I am at asking for referrals. It has to be done delicately in the right way. I do like asking for introductions.
Mhm.
Now, let me talk about the other side of what you said, and that is the cold leads. Like
Mhm.
first, for those of you who are investing, let's say, in those cold leads, recognize in general who that person is, and recognize not in general specifically how that process happens. Let me liken it to something most of us have done. Is there anybody here who has ever gone to kbb.com, kellybluebook.com, and valuated your vehicle? If you've
Mhm.
done that before, you know that you found out that your 2018 Lexus RX 350 is worth, $17,000 on a trade-in, right? And that's the information you're looking for. But what you did is you just filled out a lead form.
Mhm.
And that lead form was just sent to every car dealership that subscribes to kbb.com within 150 miles of you. And I've done that before. I won't do it again, but I've done
Right.
that before. And it's probably 45 days of mailers and phone calls and emails and, oh my gosh, everything else.
Yeah.
Now, when you buy a lead, you can certainly pay for exclusivity on that lead. I get that. But it's being sent to 3, 5, 7 advisors. And now think about who that person is. That's a person that is typically responding to an ad, maybe on Facebook. Maybe they're 55 years old, so they fit your age demographic, pre-retiree, but they're panicked about their retirement, right?
Right.
And it's going to take a lot of panic and a lot of motivation to fill out a 20 field form.
Right.
to actually be a qualified lead through that system. And so you've got somebody who is actually really fearful about their future filling out that form. And frankly, the inundation of advisor communication may not shed you in the best light.
Yep.
So
Yep.
just understand when you buy that lead, that's what you're buying is somebody who's in this fear
Yeah.
position that they're filling out this form. So
Yeah, and to your comment about, and I don't care whether what service you're going to partner with. I've got clients who are really good at smart asset. I mean, we'll do 25 to $30 million a year, just
yep,
but they've got systems, processes, protocols. It's a priority. They're really good operators of the business. It's not something that they just kind of play with like it's a core function. And I've got clients, it will never work for them because I know they're just not organized enough and have an unrealistic expectation of time horizons and stuff like that. But I want to get back to the comment about, advisors being uncomfortable about our conversation, right? The referral conversation.
yeah,
And I totally agree, by the way. If you ask me why that is, in my experience, is it's because I think advisors frame referral and introduction gathering, which in my mind kind of lopped in the same bucket for a second,
yeah,
that it's about them and their goals and what they're looking to accomplish. So, in other words, it feels a bit selfish. And the second part of that conversation becomes, I'm so lucky I have this client. I don't want to impinge on them. I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable, right? I don't want to be seen like needy or desperate, right? And there are certain consultants that have been around in the space for a while that will actually go to organizations and say, hey, real professionals never ask for referrals, right? And like everybody's like relieved. Oh, now I got permission not to have to worry about it anymore, right?
yeah.
From that perspective. And I take a whole different approach to it. And I'm going to give you guys the framework in like 2 minutes. It's not, you don't need a weekend program for this. I'm going to give you the mechanics right now. The mindset's the issue. So let me give you the mechanics, okay? So it's really about framing this conversation, not about you, although you will be a beneficiary. It's really about framing it about the client. For example, if Charlie was my client and we were wrapping up a Zoom review, right, and everything went well, like there's no issue, I would say something like this: Hey, Charlie, thanks for spending some time with me. I'm glad we got through everything we need to. Hey, man, I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to have our collaborative partnership. And I just want to remind you that if you ever have someone, a friend, a family member, a colleague, a coworker who's getting ready to retire, has a need to just talk to somebody, I'd hope you think of me. I'm always here as a resource for you and anyone that you know. Are you okay with that?
Super soft, man.
That's
Super.
it, brother. I'm not gonna say, "Hey, man, who do you know?" and like give me three
Yeah,
names and stuff like that.
yeah,
Because once you do that, you can't go back. So 6 months later, you and I have, let's say we're semi-annual. We're wrapping up a review, right? Hey, Charlie, thanks for stopping in today. I'm glad we're able to handle, tweak some of your planning, stuff like that. Again, I'm really grateful for that relationship. By the way, da da da. I'm gonna repeat the same thing. And so, what I'm really saying here, basically, is there three elements to make this work for you guys. Number one, you have to be hyper aware that this is what you have to do. It is part of your model. It is not an option, or if I think about it, it is a core function. Because why would I want Charlie's friends, family, colleagues, and coworkers, why would I want them going to the internet, right?
yeah.
To a competitor? Like, why wouldn't I want to at least have that initial? If it doesn't work for me, not a good fit, get it, right? But I should be the first pass through the whole thing. And advisor, and I say this is just a massive indictment in our industry that this is not something that is just like a cornerstone of what we do, especially, and I know most of you guys follow the data. Next 60 months is the bow wave of boomer retirements. Next 60 months, 5 years. So if there's ever a time to go, let your clients know you're here as a resource, open for business, whatever you want to say, I don't care. Now's the time, right? And you're not going to get rejected. You're not making your client feel uncomfortable, right? And it's about awareness. So it's your awareness commitment. You make your clients aware by conversation. There's some other strategies. The third thing we don't control, timing.
Yeah.
Now I got to rely on Charlie. Maybe Thanksgiving, he's with his family, or he sees his neighbor, and there's a conversation. Like I can't have no influence on that. But if I know that if I raise Charlie's awareness that I'm here, that I'm a resource,
Yeah.
he's going to start connecting those dots, and good things are going to happen.
Yeah.
And for those of you who have a total passive strategy, I'm going to give you some math real quick. If you, like in a typical year, get 5 or 6 or 7 referrals just organically, or one a month, they just kind of randomly show up, you would get 3 to 5x that if you would condition your clients to just be aware, it's all we're asking, that you're a resource for somebody that has a need. That's it. And I know it's like, it sounds overly simplistic in the mechanics of it, but it is.
Yeah.
And that's what we
You
do. That's what I teach. That's
know,
it.
Joe, you phrase it so well. We got a question here from our guests, and we'll get to that in a second. How much practice goes into that for an advisor? How many, I mean, should we be in front of the mirror and should we have that conversations in a
You can do that, man. That's like going to the driving range and hitting tee shots, and you're like, you look like Tiger Woods, and you go to the golf course and you shank
Well,
yourself off
that's
the
a
place,
good
right?
point, right? There's a whole
Yeah,
different, because that's not
yeah.
a comfortable, that's not a
No,
comfortable
it's
conversation.
so here's what. Yeah, so here's the way I roll with it. I will always tell any advisor, whether we're doing it in a group format or a one-on-one format, look, you're going to suck for the first 10 conversations, and just you're going to be
Get over it.
uncomfortable. It's
Yeah.
going to be terrible. It's going to feel terrible, sound terrible. You because we're not asking for anything. We're just making them aware. There's a low threshold. Like nothing bad's going to happen. You're going to get one of 3 possible outcomes from a client.
Yeah.
Possibility number 1, I don't know anyone right now. I'll keep you in mind. And you're going to get that probably 90% of the time,
Yeah.
right? Possibility number 2, hey, it's funny you bring that up because my cousin, like there'll be something else there, right? Or possibly number 3 would be something along the lines of, let me get back to you on it, right? Which is kind of something, let me think about it, right? I've never in the 15 to 18 years I've been teaching this strategy, have ever had a client come back to me and said, hey, we got a real issue with this referral conversation, man. I just got blown up by somebody.
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
if you're doing a review with a client, they're pissed about something or not happy, then prudence would say you don't do this, right? But if everything goes well, I'll tell you, it's kind of fascinating. We track KPI with our personal clients. And we got a decade of data now. So the first time you do with a client will be the worst you're going to do because they're hearing it for the first time, you're doing it the first time. But when a client hears it for the second and third time, so let's say and this is the problem. This is not a silver bullet, send me some money, I'll give you a magical script, and you're off to the or the magical referral letter, right? This will take you a couple quarters to indoctrinate. But here's my promise to you. Once you indoctrinate it, you're cooking. You just stay with it and go. Our data shows that for every 10 conversations, you'll source one name. So to give you real world information here, right? So I've got clients who will do between 500, 750 of these conversations in a calendar year. So let's just take 500, and this is somebody that's done it for like a year or two. So 500, we're going to source 50 names, which is about what we're going to see. Half will not be qualified. Now, why are they not qualified? Either economically, they're not going to meet your minimums, right? Math's not going to work, or they don't want to pay, or they're emotionally not qualified. They don't want to change. They want to do it themselves. They're happy with their advisor, whatever it is. So I'm going to take 50. I'm going to cut it down to 25. You all know, and I'll be curious what people put in the box. You get referred from a happy client to somebody. They meet your minimum. They're likable. They're going to be profitable. They want help. They're coachable. What's your closing ratio on somebody like that? And I'd like to see some people put some numbers. I just want to see how everybody does on that. So if I tee you up like that, how many of the 25 are you going to convert in a year? It's going to be anywhere from 18 to 22.
Yeah.
Right. So here's the thing. Most advisors, again, if you're in startup mode, it's going to be a different conversation. But if you've been at this game 5, 10, 15, 20 years, most advisors, I would say, when I talk to them, are looking to source between 12 to 18, maybe 24 new relationships a year. That's kind of what we're looking for.
right there.
That's it, man. Like, hey, man, like, don't overthink this. I think a lot of times advisors dabble in many things and master none.
Yeah, I agree.
So if we can just drive for new clients, we can just drive this thing. And like, I know you guys think like this is so overly simplistic, but it really is.
Doesn't
Do the
matter.
reps.
Yeah.
No, that's it. So the reason why advisors don't do this, by the way, and they put stuff in front of them, but real quick, then I know, this is like your show, not mine. It's kind of the head trash. I mean, what it really boils down to, they don't know if they deserve it, that they may be lucky, that somehow, there's this disconnect, and it kind of shows up in internal conversations that just like, hey, my clients know that I'm here if they need something, like, let's just, they think about it's going to happen. Or, real professionals don't ask. Well, we didn't ask. We just made people aware. So we're covered there. But it gets in, and they kind of make it okay. not to do it. But they'll raise their hand and say, yeah, the best way to get clients is referrals. They'll raise their hand and say, yes, the best way, but that's it. And it's just like a conceptual.
Yeah.
It's so easy to stroke a check and try to solve. There are no shortages of human beings that will take your money to try to solve your problem and sell you a silver bullet.
Yeah.
And some things are just, and I say this with utmost respect to everybody here, you got to do the work. Like, there's no shortcut here. There's strategies, right? It's 80% psychology and 20% mechanics, and advisors want to make it all about the mechanics and not about the psychology.
Yeah, there's not, I mean, and to Deepak, Deepak wants the repeat on it, and that's great. But that's your style, and that's a style you developed with your advisors over years of doing it. Deepak's
Sure.
going to have a different style.
Correct. And
And
that's
so
fine. I don't care.
get comfortable in your style, but you got to start. I did a little art when I was younger, and we always started by, duplicating great works until we could
Yeah.
get our own style, right? So,
Yeah.
great place to start. Joe, another question for you that came up: how does that conversation differ with a COI?
Great question.
Yeah.
So, first off, maybe we won't get to the deck today, which is fine. I know what we need to talk about. So I think, first off, I think advisors are very myopic on COIs. They think CPA and attorney, and that would be probably 80% of our universe, right, from that perspective. So I'm going to spend 2 minutes on that real quick, and then I'm going to kind of maybe hopefully expand some thinking. I had a client a couple of years ago. I have a lot of them that say this, but I'll just pick this one. And he literally said to me, he goes, "John, my COI game sucks." I said, "Okay, well, there's a reason for it. So enlighten me on why you think it sucks." And he told me it was beautiful. He goes, about 10 years ago, I met with 5 CPAs. At 2 of them, I got a couple of referrals from 2 of them, and then nothing happens after that. And I went, so let me get this right. So you had 5 meetings, and you got 2 guys, and you got 2 CPAs to kind of give you some stuff. That's like rock star level. And I think there's this unrealistic expectation. And just on the CPA community, real quick, there are 3 types of CPAs. There are the ones that have it in-house. So we mentally or may say, well, we can't touch those. It's not true. If they do auditing and they're the audit firm for a corporation, they can't have any conflicts. So you don't know, there could be an opportunity there. 99% of advisors will never talk to that CPA. I would say talk to them. Second CPA is going to be somebody that basically says it's a conflict. Or no, they won't say it. They'll say, yeah, I don't have anybody right now. We just don't do it. Da, 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 da. And so what most advisors do go, oh, that's my guy or gal. That's the one, right? They got nobody. I'm going to be their one. There's a reason why they don't have one. It's not for lack of opportunity.
Yeah.
They're philosophically not aligned to it, and you're not going to change their mind.
Right.
That's like doing missionary work. And what happened to all the missionaries back in the 1600s? They took a lot of arrows. Not the business I want to be in. Then there's the third one that has their person at this firm, their person at that firm. That's the CPA I want to talk to. You know why? I don't have to change their mind. What I need to do is get on their dance card, and I just have to be superior to anybody else that their referral are going to. I just have to rock star my game from there. That's the third one, right, from that perspective. And bottom line is, if you want, like, say, 3 to 5 CPAs to really kind of play ball with, you're going to have to meet with 50 to 100. I mean, that's just the numbers.
Yeah.
Right? 95 to 90% of advisors will never go through that rejection, pain, and suffering. I say walk through the desert, right, to get to the ocean. They just won't do it.
Yeah.
But if you do it, and this is strategic, so you can't sit there and say, oh, I'm going to go get COIs today, and I'm going to get business in 90 days. No, you can't. It's very strategic in that, right? Hi, Coach Joe Lukacs here, and I'm just breaking here for a moment just to do a couple quick reminders. Number one, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel or our podcast. In addition, please leave a comment or a review. Those things really, really matter. And share this episode with 3 of your colleagues inside the financial services space. And lastly, make sure that you go ahead and claim your free membership inside of Magellan Network. Now back to this week's episode. And then as far as attorneys go, everybody kind of picks the estate planning attorney because that's logical. I get that. Most of the time, there are some outliers, but most of the time, the estate planning attorney is the worst COI because guess where they get their business from? Or you and all your competitors, right? So unless they're at a big firm and they've got partners that can refer, or they're doing their own kind of marketing and biz dev game, it's not where I see a lot. Business attorneys can be good. I've got 3 or 4 advisors who really have tight relationships with personal injury attorneys. And so we get some really nice liquidity events out of there. quotes here. You're not going to deal with the cream of the crop when it comes to who gets those payouts typically. So you just be aware of that. That's where it kind of stops for people. I want to share, I share this with my clients, but I'll share with you guys here. So we can talk about realtors and mortgage people and property casualty and all that stuff, but let's save all that. There's going to be two very specific targets I want you guys to think of in terms of COI, and I'm going to make the case why in a second. So if you're dealing in the corporate space or retirement rollovers, executives, right? I will tell you who you need to align yourself with is going to be look for some of the best executive coaches you could find because they have deep, meaningful relationships with their client. In essence, they are 10 times the COI to that person than their CPA and attorney. They have way more influence. And if you think about from the, again, Charlie and I are coaches. If you think about what would stress out an executive, retirement planning, their money game, pricing of stock options, all that stuff, right? So if I'm a coach and I got an executive and she's like freaking out because she's 55 and she doesn't know, da da da, would it be nice if I had somebody on my team, an advisor that I can trust, to make that introduction to help me help them, right? So if you're in the executive space, that is where COI, a center of influence, Kenneth, FYI on that. So thank you on that. So on the corporate side, executive coaches, right? So if you guys are involved with like B&I and any kind of like networking program or you're involved in groups, like don't go talk to the CPA. Go talk to the coach. They're going to have the relationship. Now, if you want business owners and entrepreneurs, same concept. A coach that specializes in business owners, okay? Because they're business owner paying, tax planning, cash flow, retention of key players, right? Exit planning, all the above. Massive value proposition there. And again, I'm a business coach that only does financial advisors. So that would be how I would frame myself. I have relationships with clients for 20, 30 years. I mean, if I say, hey, you should check something out, they're going to do it.
I can speak firsthand to that.
Yeah, Charlie's on my virtual team, and I refer a lot of my clients to Charlie, and they'll take Charlie's meeting because they said, I think it's good that you should, right? From that perspective. So I think we as an industry really need to rethink what a COI is and stop maybe elevating the CPA and the attorney and start looking at other, what I'll call non-traditional, lack of a better term here, and kind of source over there. I just think it's, I've got clients that are killing it on the corporate side with one or two executive coaches. Like we're just part of like, there's one coach in particular, what she does when she takes on a new client, she's like expensive. She's like $25,000, $35,000 a year. She brings my client in and she'll pay my client a couple $1,000s to do a very rudimentary financial plan analysis, stock options, stuff like that, as just part of her service, even though that executive may have a financial advisor in place already. And shockingly, we do a much better job and we care more. And more often than not, we get it. So my point being is, expand your thinking of what a COI is depending on your market and your marketing.
Let me comment on a few things here. You said a ton of great advice. I love the business coaches angle. So when it comes to traditional, you do need a lot of meetings with CPAs. And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of advisors seeking meetings with CPAs. So they're not easy meetings to get. If you're walking down that path, start with the CPAs of your 10 best clients. That doesn't mean your 10 most affluent clients necessarily, but your 10 best clients. And you can make a meeting based on that mutual client. Let that meeting be about that mutual client, but that opens up rapport for maybe outreach 2 or 3 months later to have a more dedicated conversation about a referral relationship.
Yep, agreed. Yeah.
Now, let's take this in a little. So in your presentation, Joe, of the COIs, and I love the business coach one, and we've got a couple that are great for us in that regard, yourself included, and thank you for that. Look at what Joe and I are doing right now. Right? We marketed this for a week and a half or so, right? Came up with a great concept. I put some description and some artwork together. We sent some emails out. We got some social media posts out. Joe and I have pretty strong email databases. Joe's got Magellan Network, which if you join into Magellan Network, you'll see that there's a dedicated community, a dedicated app where I post, Joe posts, others post. And so what ends up happening is we serve the same type of client. Our services are complementary to each other. By hosting this, I'm gaining exposure to some of Joe's network. Joe's gaining exposure to some of my network who may not know who either of us are at that moment. And so there's an opportunity, and I hesitate to go too deep. I don't want to make this seem like anything's happening other than we're bringing good information to people. But by virtue
Sure.
of that, we gain new introductions, and there's a trust transfer there,
Mhm.
right? So people who know me listen to me for years, and vice versa. If you can take a COI, great for a referral now and then, but host an event with them.
Yeah.
If you've got a network that you're building and you can bring people to an event and they've got a network that they're building and can bring to an event, it's such a wonderful way to open yourself up to additional email addresses you get to communicate with,
Yeah.
questions from the audience that you can follow up on. Anyway, so it's not just as much as that one-to-one conversation you're having, but it allows you to be in front of a much larger audience and that trust transfers immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. And when we build out concepts for clients, we talk about doing 4 virtual educational webinars a year.
Awesome.
One of them is always going to be around tax. One of them is always going to be around estate planning. Then you have 2 you can play with if you want. And there's so much value you can add. So in other words, so here's kind of what if anybody's read any of Robert Cialdini's work, the book Influence, what you're really looking to do is create reciprocation or reciprocity with a COI, where they feel like they kind of owe you, and not in a manipulative way, but in a very ethical and honest way. So one of the ways we like to do that. So if some of you have doing podcasts, invite them on as a guest. If you want to do a client event, invite them in as a speaker. If you do live client events, selectively invite COIs to come as your guests. Most of them will not come, but I'll tell you what, you get a COI to come to one of your client events, and they talk to your clients. It's like endorsement social proof times 10, right? It requires work, it requires dedication, requires some energy. One of the best things you could do, right, from that perspective. So I think a lot of it is about that. It's still going to be a bit of a numbers game. I totally endorse what Charlie said. If you're an advisor that just has 100 households as kind of your universe, I'm telling you, between CPA, attorney, business coaches, other consultants, depending on what space you're in, you're going to probably have 150, 200 other entities that you can connect with that have commonality. There's no reason in this day and age to go cold market to a CPA, an attorney, a this or that. Use your now. This is a psychology. This is not a mechanic thing. Okay. What I would love everybody to, at some level, start soaking in. There's 2 ways to get to a result. There's a direct, easier way or the harder, more expensive way. The harder, more expensive way, you got to kind of pay for some marketing. Then I got to do this. And I get some names. They don't know me from Adam. I got to then take all this time to try to persuade them to like me and trust me. Then I get access to maybe some of their clients. Or I can go to the direct route and say, hey, we have a common client, Mary Jones. I was in a review with Mary. She spoke very highly of what you do for her tax prep, stuff like that. And a sidebar, real quick for everybody. You should check to see if your CPAs are taking on new 1040 clients, because a lot of them are not. And a lot of them are getting older. They're selling their practices to regionals. Regionals do not want that 1040 work unless it's tied to a business. So you're going to have the day one day when a client comes to you and said, my attorney retired, he sold his practice, a new person will do my 1040s. Do you know somebody? So there's also that conversation. Hey, are you taking on new clients? I need resources, right? So keep that in mind also. Okay.
I love it, man. Joe, we've gone on for 40 minutes. Can you believe it?
I got to remind myself not to get so damn excited and passionate about this stuff. Again, I love what I do, and it's just a good thing I don't need notes, right? From that perspective, right? Otherwise,
It is.
kind of feel a bit differently, right?
Same here. We had an
Yeah.
agenda.
This is a true story. Charlie and I had this agenda. I had decks put
Yeah.
together, da 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 da, and we
Yeah.
just go, screw it, man. We're just going to riff it, and here we go, right?
I think it's good. It's organic information. You got a couple more years than me, but not too many. We got a combined wealth of working with advisors for 50 plus years that I think, just by virtue of being in front of so many people and handling so many situations, it sounds like there's a pretty good, we're getting good feedback in the chat. And so appreciate that. Before we wrap up here, listen, Joe's a great resource and very responsive. I'm a great resource and very responsive. So if you've got questions about, I actually do have one more topic, Joe. We won't spend too much time on this, but
Let's have it.
you and I had that initial conversation with your deep thoughts with an axe with a tree in August heat in Florida. For what reason to do that, I don't know. We also talked about who calls an advisor off a Google listing.
Yeah.
Right? Like that was part of our conversation, right? It wasn't just leads. It was like, who searches for an advisor off a Google listing?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, if that's actually happening, and I know it is. First off, you know who's spending the money to show up at the top of that first page? It's Morgan Stanley and Edward Jones and the people with the deep pockets.
correct,
So
correct.
the independent advisor, the RIA out there doesn't really have a chance to compete on most keywords.
I can tell you who plays. Fisher plays, Edward Jones
There's
plays, and you're just not gonna outpocket them. You're just no way, right? From that perspective. So again, it goes back to how does somebody end up there? In their mind, they don't know where else to go
right? That's it.
because none of their friends or we need to really teach them to do is go talk to your CPA and your attorney and then come to us, right? There's a third column here, if you will, which is the advisor's warm market, which is like the third rail of this thing, right? It's one thing to talk to clients, another thing to talk to other professionals. But oh man, the parents at your kid's soccer game and, people at the club or whatever. And so I do want to give, because this is a big place. Because look, I'm telling you right now, everybody knows 3 to 5 people are gonna retire in the next 24 to 36 months. That includes you, the advisor, okay? When I say no, you're gonna know them socially. How do you nuance that, right? You can't go in there like Rambo and, like, throw out business cards, and you can't go to, like, the country club and right? Persona non grata. So, there are a couple of ways to indoctrinate warm markets into your world in a very soft way. And I'm gonna give a couple strategies here. And like I said, it's all part of a master class. Every element from referrals to COIs, everything, their own 30-minute master class, which again, there's no paywall. You just got to register to get it. If you're in a social setting, and I'm not gonna pick anybody because I know some of the names, but if I were in a social setting and I was an advisor, and one of my country club buddies, soccer friend, whatever, doesn't matter, right? Comes up and says, "Hey Joe, how's everything? How's business?" Because they know what I do, right? What do most people say when the question of how business? I'm just curious in the chat. How do most people answer how's business? What do most of us say? Business is good. We're really busy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because our society values
Values.
being overwhelmed, right? In essence. So, what message does that send the person? Number one, I'm successful. Thank you very much.
Yep.
And I'm probably too busy to talk to you about whatever you think you need to talk to me about because I'm really busy, right? Terrible, terrible, terrible messaging. And it's so programmed that I would say 80% of adults, that's what they do. Just boom, don't even think about it. So here's how I want you to answer that question from now on. So when someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, Joe, hey, what's new, man? How's business?" Hey, business is really great. We're helping a lot of people with their retirements and rollovers, and we're always here as a resource for anybody that you know. Done,
Yep.
right? And again, possible responses. Oh man, hey man, that's great. I'll keep you in mind, or I don't know anyone, or I do know somebody, or hey,
Talk to you.
hey, maybe I want to talk to you.
Exactly.
So with your warm market, there's two key places. It has to be their idea to talk
Yep.
to you. So we need to just kind of create that condition for that to happen. The second thing is that in social settings, confidentiality can never be implied. It has to be explicit. So if Charlie was the one that asked me that and he said, "Well, hey, Joe, maybe I want to talk to you. Charlie, I'd love to talk to you. Now's not the place. Let me reach out to you. We'll set up a time and just want to let you know. Anything we talked about, it's between you and I. It's totally confidential. This will not leave the two of us, right?"
Yes.
In social settings, especially groups, people either someone to know how much money they have or how little money they have based upon how they're operating,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So confidentiality is really important. Other thing you could do is if you're doing client events, you could selectively invite some of your warm market to come. Hey, I'm doing this client event at the zoo. We're having the zoo day. I know you got young kids. It's for my clients, but I've got extra tickets. So why don't you guys come, right? And kind of bring them into your world where they start seeing you in a different identity, a different light, and they get to talk to your clients. Oh, how long you been a client of Charlie's? It's oh, I'm not really a client. My kids play soccer together. Da da da. Oh,
Yeah.
Charlie's great, man. Da, da. Like what you have to do with warm market is set up what I call situations and conditions. Remember this anytime virtually or real that you can have prospects slash non-clients and clients in the same room at the same time, it's very good for your business, right? Because your clients, especially if they're advocate oriented, will do a much more effective job selling you than you'll ever do for yourself,
Yeah,
right?
it's the truth. So we promote a lot of small intimate events, right? And
Correct.
names and knowing who our clients are attached to. and then setting up a social event that has nothing to do with business, knowing that if we've got 2 or 3 clients, 2 or 3 social connections in the same room, those clients do every bit of selling,
Yeah.
and we can just be humble about
Yeah.
how cool we are.
Yeah.
Your praises.
Yeah. And for those of you who are doing cold lead, 'cause I know probably some of you are, which is cool, but real quick, cognizant of the time too.
Yeah.
My team that does between 25 and $30 million a year, smart asset, those are playing in this cold space. Like how do they do? What's so different?
Yeah.
Besides system or processes, there are two other elements for this. Okay. Number one, we rarely get meetings the first week. We get a lead from Smart Asset. It's usually week 3. We wait for it to all die. Because think about it, some per person puts their information in, and they got 3 advisors like sharks in Shark Week, like with blood in the water. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But the other two go away to the next shiny object. We come back around week 3. That's where we get the highest rate of meetings. Second thing we do is that these guys always have like a quarterly client educational event, and they do a client one-on-one. So one educational event, one live event. Every smart asset lead gets invited to both,
Yeah.
right? We only get 5 or 10% of them showing up. They show up. They've now identified themselves, right?
Right.
And they get to talk to our clients. Again, especially on the live, especially when we do a live event. So again, it's just that you've got to think about, to what Charlie says, when you're doing cold traffic, and again, there's a place for that. Your start point is you don't even have trust right now
Yeah.
because you're just an absolute stranger to them. Where on a referral, you already shortened that. The convincing time has been radically shortened because it's coming off endorsement, right? From that perspective. And that's why I think most advisors don't understand. Referral generation, COI client, doesn't matter, is the most efficient and effective way to get into clients.
Yeah. I would say whether it's cold Joe or whether it's a referral, and we all know that not every referral is going to close right away, right? Really important that you add them to CRM and email list.
Mhm.
Keep them informed, understand what their needs are, maybe based on their age, based on their particular needs and who they are, so that you can send them specific information that is personalized to them. Events like this are a really important part of an overall business development strategy, right? Because
Mhm.
we've got a very large database. By virtue of what we do, we've got a very large email database that we nurture all the time. Many of you are here because of that email database. The webinar, depending on the topic that we put in front of you, if you register for that, I know that that is, in your sphere of something of interest, right? So, we don't ever want to abuse the fact that you're showing up for an event, but it tells us a little bit about who you are and where your needs lie. And like Joe, listen, we give advice away all the time. That's, what we do. And some people want to work with us in a deeper regard. But, whether it's in a forum like this or a one-on-one for 30 minutes, or I'm always open for that type of conversation. But get the email address, get it into a CRM, probably not Redtail, probably not Wealthbox. I don't want to intermingle that with your client database. Let
Mhm.
that client database be really, really clean. And by virtue of prospecting and business development, your prospect database might get a little bit muddy, but it allows you to measure how many emails did they open up? Did they attend an event of yours? That person who might have been a smart asset lead 3 months ago who showed no interest is now all of a sudden hitting everything that you're doing.
Mhm.
So very few of them are going to close right away. I have a couple of clients that do really, really well with them. Might be 10% of the advisors that I know that are buying them. Right. So the other
Yeah.
90% just don't have a process for it really.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, I get asked, how long should I follow up on a prospect? I get that every once in a while. Right? And I always say, look, man, either they become a client or they tell you to go pound sand. It's very binary, right? You're either going to get them or they're going to reject you and they'll be off the list. We have to remember, I'm very lucky. I study human beings for decades, and human beings are in a constant state of reevaluation. When an advisor comes into a prospect's world, you represent change to that person. And we all know how much everybody loves change.
Yeah.
And you're also dealing with a very sensitive and sometimes emotionally painful thing. Do I have enough money? Did I squander my career? So I want you to come at it not from like, oh, I got to go get 15 households this year and I want to go raise, $8 to $10 stuff like that. I mean, that's part of our business concept. But when you're dealing with human beings, like I said, this is the ultimate people business. Empathy is really critical. Really kind of providing them what I call a soft emotional cushion to have honest conversations, to really be an active listener, to not, and I'm going to say this and hopefully it doesn't get me in trouble, learn how to ask great questions and be present. Drop the pitch book and the deck because then you're talking at people. You're not learning anything about them. You cannot help somebody until you know who they are and what they need. Your pitch deck will not solve that problem. They're just going to know what you're about, and you have no information. That could be for a second meeting. First meeting is all about them. Okay.
Joe, I think that's a great place to wrap. Yeah, it is a relationship business after all, right? So understand that while you may have, depending on the firm you're with, quotas to hit, you're dealing with people, and so those are little division there. First up, before we get out of here, it always humbles me the number of people who want to come and learn from us, Joe. And so thank you to everybody who took time out of your day. I hope you found value in our conversation. We're very easy people to get in touch with. I'll plug MagellanNetwork.net is
Yeah, Magellan Network. I would say just come to Magellan. You can find me, MagellanNetwork.net, one word, MAGDLN network.net. Pretty simple to find. It's a real gift that I get the opportunity to share my 30 plus years of insights and kind of what works. And I love this stuff, man. I'm passionate about this industry. So again, thank you all. Your time is very valuable, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share it with me.
Yeah, Joe, thanks for sharing with us. Listen, man, your passion, you can't hide it. You never could. Thank you, man. Good to see you. And everybody else, again, thanks for a little bit of your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Magellan Network Show. Hey, if any of this resonated with you, I invite you to come to MagellanNetwork.net, and we have a powerful group coaching community of like-minded advisors. Come in for a trial. You and I will have a one-on-one conversation. Let's see if I can help elevate your game, both personally and professionally.